Labor is rebranding. They used to be the tax and spend party, and now they're the tax, spend and borrow party. I looked through the big list of qualities that they wanted to attribute to the Labor brand: funky, cool, all that. What else was there? Edgy, retro, creepy. So I did boring, that's right, intelligent. But I did my own survey. And in the public, I did my own survey asking members of the public. And the one thing that's got through to the public, the only thing probably, because I don't quite remember the name of the leader of the opposition, and they certainly have never heard of the opposition's finance spokesman, the one thing they do know is that Labor want to borrow money. And borrow big. Because I've been looking at what they say about what their policy is. And debt's a serious issue in New Zealand. I'll tell you why it's a serious issue. There's any number of ways you can measure it, but let's take net debt. The dollar amount of net debt for the end of the financial year 2009, June the 30th, was 17 billion, was the government's net debt. By 2016, it will be 65 billion. It will be 65 billion. And that is under the careful, considered management of this government. It will go from 17 billion to 65 billion. And that sits alongside a broader picture for New Zealand, where the total amount of debt owed by New Zealand, which was by government and households and businesses, in 2000 it was 90 billion. Today it stands at 170 billion, and it was heading by 2014 to 250 billion. 250 billion. Why is that a problem? Well, potentially a problem. You've only got to see what is happening in world debt markets as we speak with respect to Greece. And who knows, Portugal may be next. We are going into a decade where governments whose debt levels are high will be scrutinised more closely than any time since before the Second World War as to what they're doing to make sure that the people who lend that money will get it back. And Greece is finding out that if you don't do enough, people will stop lending to you, and then you've got a real problem. And in that context, Labor's brightest star, according to him, David Cunliffe, says debt is not a big problem. And what's more, he's backed up that assertion. He's backed up that assertion with policy, well, not just with poetry, but with policy positions. Because there's no doubt the policy positions are pretty clear-cut. Go and borrow a whole lot more money to put into the super fund. Go and borrow a whole lot more money to put back the R&D tax credits. Go and borrow a whole lot more money to make up for all the low-quality spending that we are shifting around. So Labor have made their position pretty clear on debt. They don't think it matters much. They think it's fine to borrow a lot more when borrowing is already going up far too fast, and they simply don't care about the people who come after them who would have to pay back $65 billion worth of net debt that New Zealand would have. But at least on debt we know what their position is. That is, borrow a lot more money. On tax we have no idea what their position is. Well, and that is exactly the point. The reason it's hard for us to tell is because they don't know. So GST is not a new subject. Not a new subject. It's been kicking around for 9 months, and the Labor Party's position seems to be this: we're against it, but we can't promise not to do GST because we're not sure if we can carry out that promise. Because we don't know what we're doing, because we're worried that all the spending promises might need GST to pay for them. So they don't know they're against GST, but they won't roll it back. But we're absolutely clear that they are in favour of borrowing more and more money.
Catherine Delahunt.